crew tonight. We've got Dieter Staudinger up in Toronto, Eric back here in Phoenix, along with Diane up in frigid Fargo, minus 18, you say?
Yep, Fargo, North Dakota.
Yeah, and that's like, and that's the static temperature, or what is it with a wind chill, like minus 50 or something like that?
Right now it is 17 degrees.
Okay. All right. So
Balmy.
So that side of beef you're carrying with you will be preserved nicely. So anyway. Well, we'd like to welcome you. This is our effort to help people who have a fear of flying, or know somebody who has a fear of flying, and we have quite a few people who tune in just to talk about or listen to us talk about airplanes and what's current in the industry. We had a busy week at FearlessFlight. We had an advanced class on Saturday. We just finished this Clear for Takeoff 201 class. And when I say finished, I say that with kind of air quotes because the content remains up there for at least 3 months. And the active part of the class is we have live webinars where we talk about the material that's in the student portal. But people have access to the student portal, and it will be continuing to grow because the overcoming your fear of flying is really a process, and it's best accomplished if you stay current, just like we do as crew members. It'd stay in the content. So anyway, but we had our first of 3 classes, which I had a group of people here in Phoenix. Eric and I escorted them over to Burbank, California, and back. Another just huge success. People amazed at how well they did, and then I had a special treat. I flew with our guest over back yesterday from Chicago. He had gone up to visit his mom who was ill, and he had asked me if I would come up and consider doing some coaching and fly back with him. So we did. And so he's on here to share with experience. I think you'll find yourself in that, and certainly should be inspired by Jim's stick-to-itiveness and that. Eric, anything you want to add about the class on Saturday before we get Jim here?
Everybody did so well, and I tried not to make myself think it was us, but they were a little nervous and asking questions, but very low drag, a lot of fun. And once again, I did fall asleep on the return leg with my charge next to me, also sleeping. And Captain Ron failed to take a picture of that. That was an opportunity lost. But everybody,
you probably thought I fell asleep. I actually didn't, but I considered it. So.
You really should. It's the only way to fly. But everybody had a great deal, and they were elated when they got off, just like they always are. And they were very low drag, but we were ecstatic to fly out there and back with them.
Okay. And Diane, how about you? You've been on multiple trips, right?
Yeah, I had a 4-day trip last week, and I am on day 3 of another 4-day trip. 2 nights ago, we were in Fargo, North Dakota. Last night in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and tonight back in Fargo, getting home tomorrow, back down to Phoenix, and then doing what we refer to as a penalty lap over and back to El Paso, Texas. So always interesting. We've had to de-ice, as you might imagine. The first morning we were in Fargo, it was 7 degrees at about 6 o'clock in the morning when we got on the plane. So always, and it's never a dull moment. One of our days we had 4 legs, and we wound up instead of on the one aircraft we were scheduled to be on, we were on 3 different planes because of some mechanical issues. So there's the glamour of it all.
I love it in those cold places because the snow is so cold, it like crunches under your feet when you walk. And there's I flew an airplane once that had an oil temperature limitation. You could not turn the engines over, spin them. It was a turboprop. If the oil was minus 40, colder than minus 40, because the oil is like tar and it won't lubricate. And I have seen minus 40 on 3 different occasions. And it doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter when you that, you know, your exposed flesh just freezes on contact.
Ron, that's still a limitation for almost all jets,
Yeah.
jets too. It's just that you and I never hit it down here, but if it's going to get close to that, they have to do something before it gets there. You're right.
Yeah.
And we wind up with a very simple thing. They have to drain all the water out of the planes at night.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So when we get on the plane in the morning, we can't make coffee. We can't make hot.
Right.
We can't do anything because we don't have any water for water. And the same thing with the aft water. The sink in the lavatory doesn't work because there's no water back there. Because I mean, it's a lot of interesting things that occur because of temperature changes. So yeah.
If you get really lucky, you won't have to de-ice in the morning because it will be so cold the air can't hold any water vapor. The wing may be real shiny.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
We
I had a month of 7 layovers in Saskatoon, and we were delayed every morning by some sort of cold related issue, including one day we couldn't get the engine, the start valve open, so we couldn't get in here. Okay, enough of those cold stories. We are, of course, want to remind you about our Fearless Flight private Facebook club or group called Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather. It's a great place to meet other people who are somewhere along the journey trying to find their way back through their fear and start flying comfortably. And we encourage you to join that. We're 900 plus strong now and growing, and the more the merrier. So tonight we'll talk about just some of the basic things about fear flying, and we'll do it in the context of interviewing our guest Jim Morris, who's going to come on and talk about his experiences. So Jim, how about joining us?
Hello.
Voila. Hey, welcome. It seems like we just saw each other yesterday.
We did. We did, yes.
And Jim and I flew from O'Hare, Chicago's O'Hare, to LAX, and then he went home, and I was 30 seconds from catching my connecting flight and got to spend another 2 hours at the airport, which is always a treat. You know, you never get enough time at the airport. So anyway, so just a little bit just about yourself, Jim. Who are you, and where do you hail from, and what do you do for a living? And
I grew up in Chicago, outside of Chicago. I currently live in Los Angeles. I've lived here about 25 years. I currently work in the field of user experience, which is how people.
We were laughing about that when we're trying to figure out the video and stuff in this luxury suite that Jim rented for us on this airplane.
And user experience is kind of like putting the humanity in technology. That's sort of how I explain what I do. It's how people use that. And I used to fly, as far as flying, I used to fly a lot as a kid in my teens and 20s. The fear started to get its hooks in me in my 30s. And then I probably just made it a bad habit, work out worse and worse. And I used booze and after a while Valium, and sometimes both. It over time just became a very unpleasant experience for me. And about 7 years ago, I just stopped. I was like, I'm done. I live in Southern California. I could take some road trips. My family could visit me. I'm just tired of the mental gymnastics that I have to do. Anyway, that's kind of the long and short of it.
And it's you have kind of a side hustle too, right? You write creative writing.
I do. I worked in TV in my 20s, 30s on some TV shows. I still write, and the way I describe it is sometimes I get paid and sometimes I don't. So I don't lead with that. You know, I lead with my kind of day job that.
And what I found particularly interesting when I asked you what kind of content you write, you said.
Well, thrillers. Yeah, thrillers.
Horror stories. Yeah. And I thought, perfect. because you've got a well-developed fearful part of your brain, so why not draw from that? And
Yeah.
and the stories that some of them you shared with me that you terrorize yourself with are absolutely they'd be mind-breaking or mind-bending. So anyway, so when and you said you've noticed it. I mean, 7 years ago you just kind of quit, but has it always been an issue for you, or?
Yeah, flying is always, not always. I can't pinpoint it. I think it was slightly after the earthquake out in Los Angeles. I started to get more scared that if you couldn't trust the ground, that other things probably you couldn't trust other things either. You know,
Was that the Northridge quake?
yeah,
Yeah.
That's 91 or something, and then it just
Yeah.
slowly progressed. I got into some bad habits, bad thinking habits, bad behavioral habits, and then it becomes a habit. It just cascades after a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, I just share with some of the viewers what you've done. You know, not so much that, you know, all the diverse things that you've done to try to overcome this, but to me, the persistence that you've shown, which I think really speaks to how a lot of people overcome it.
So, well, when I stopped flying, I was actually relieved. I was like,
Yeah.
I am not going to fly. And in a weird way, you trick yourself into thinking that's going to be a solution, because you're scared of something, and then you think the fear is going to go away. Like, but what happens, at least with me, is that the fear doesn't go away. It grows because you continue to avoid it. It grows. And then, at least for me, it starts to seep in unconsciously into other areas of it. There's a general sense in the background that says, you can't. Well, you can't fly. So then if you've given up on that, then it's sort of the idea that you can't handle X starts to bleed into other areas of Y, Z, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That fear starts to leak elsewhere. And then it makes you, at least for me, it starts making you feel bad about yourself, which I know you shouldn't. It's just a problem, but it starts to make you not feel capable in your own life because you have what you know is an irrational fear. You know, I know it's phobic, and yet it stops me from doing what I know rationally is a safe activity. So that makes you feel bad.
Yeah. And I was impressed. You got about a notebook. It's got about 1.5 inches thick of paper, well, and that's just your portable version, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I have a notebook of, I don't know if you could see it, of just and I did it just so I had of every book I read. You can't really see it because it's blurred.
Yeah.
Of the different anxiety books I read, of the different fear of flying books I read, that I've done everything. I've done everything. If there is a program out there, I've taken it. If there's a book out there, I've read it. If there's a YouTube series, I've seen it. I've done it all. And I kept looking for a magic pill or a magic phrase or something that would take away my fear. I figured, if I talk to that person, or if I do that thing, or if I watch the Takeoff, if I do all that, it's going to take away, that'll be the thing that takes away my fear. And it never did. And because it didn't, the fear only grew, because I was like, oh my God, this is not taking away the fear. This fear is becoming incredibly huge. And I'm somebody who, you know, if there's a problem, I will work at it. I work at it. But I think a phobic thing, it's counterintuitive. After a while, you cannot get over a phobia by not doing the thing, whether it's elevators or bridges or tunnels or public speaking. You cannot get over it by not doing the thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And when did you start connecting with us at FearlessFlight?
I have been on the periphery of your life for a few years, although you didn't know it. I was your
Kind of a
stalker.
stalker.
But I had bought your turbulence guide and your flight harmonizer, and I always knew about you. And then, but
Wasn't off a bathroom wall or anything, was it?
no. But
No,
the-
yeah.
I think the magic sauce was I always knew that you had group flights.
Uh-huh.
And then I was going to look into that, but then the pandemic hit, and then that kind of went away. And then you kind of resurfaced with that stuff recently.
Yeah.
And then that's when I became more cued into your stuff.
So so people who take the online course, you don't just get it once, you get it like 3 times or so. So you were getting ready to fly with us, and then this wasn't planned necessarily, right? This flight that we just did. You want to share the background to that? How did you decide this was the weekend?
So I had taken a couple of your classes online, and I knew I wasn't, quote, ready to fly, but I just wanted the information, and I wanted to meet people, and I wanted to continue to baking in the knowledge. But my mom lives in Chicago. I live in Los Angeles. She was initially I was just gonna help her move into a retirement community, and so I went out to visit. But of course, I didn't fly. I took the train, and I thought, yeah, I'll take the train. It'll be 2 days. It'll be this romantic adventure, just a dude on whatever on the train. But I mean, no diss to the people who work on Amtrak. They were very friendly. The people who worked the train, they were very nice. And the food on the train was nice. So I don't want to, but other than that, for me, it was a horrible, horrible trip because it took 48 hours. The tracks are not maintained. So you jerk more. I jerked more in that train ride than I did in most of the bad turbulence I've ever been in. And it's continuous, and not the rhythmic way that seems like soothing, like, oh, like in the movies. You hear it. And then on top of it, I used to love the sound of a train horn. I grew up in a rural area where it seems sort of like, I don't know, Rockwellian, hearing that train. But when you're on the train and that train bleats, that bleeding horn goes for every road crossing across America.
Right.
That it goes on day and night. So I barely got any sleep. It was one of the most depressing trips I've ever taken. And on top of it, while I'm in it, I'm thinking I cannot take this train back. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll drive. So I called some car companies. But the cost to rent a car was exorbitant. And plus it would have been 3 days, and I couldn't work while I'm driving. I just thought that was crazy. And I was really at my wit's end and all this, I'm feeling even worse because I'm on this terrible train ride because I am not flying. Jim, you're on this terrible plane ride because you're not flying. And anyway, I saw my mom and she was ill. So that's a separate story. But I knew to get home, in a weird way, the universe conspired to get me on a plane, because had that train been a decent ride, I would have probably just accepted, I know it takes me 2 or 3 days to get places, but the train's not bad. But because it was such a horrible experience for me, I got on and booked a coaching call right away, and it worked out that we flew, and actually it's great that it did. I don't know, did I answer that? Did I just babble?
No, not at all.
No, it was the War and Peace version of the answer, but it was all the details were important.
Yeah. So that's
all of them.
So when I got up there, and and what was it like when it got time to go to the airport? What were your original expectations, and then how did that work out when you actually flew? going to the airport at least.
I'll answer the question this way. I had terrible anticipatory anxiety in the days leading up to that flight. And I think, honestly, I think the anticipatory anxiety is what keeps most flyers off planes.
I had 3 calls this week, and 2 of them used the same expression. They said they talk about getting cold feet when it gets time to fly. Is that a fair summation of what it's like?
Yeah, because the fear is real. It's not fake. The fear is very real. It's very potent. It's terrifying, but it's not based on reality. But I was committed to flying, and part of that was I was committed, and I was also trapped there. I think if I was just doing a practice flight, I might have come up with an excuse to be like, oh, but I had to fly back home. And so commitment helped. And then once I was in the airport, I actually felt strangely okay. And then of course I see the tall drink of water known as Ron come towards me. And I was like, here he is, let's do this.
Yeah. And I frankly, I was, from some of the conversations we had, I was really amazed that you were so calm when we connected yesterday.
Yeah, because it reminded me, it reminded me of this, the part of myself that used to fly before it got hijacked with this phobia. And I was sort of, it was sort of a welcoming of like, oh, and then plus I all the work that I had put into this over the last amount of time, researching in the YouTube and I pulled different pieces from different places, and it was not wasted time. It really helped because I could say to myself, I had done the work. I had prepared. That's not to say it was a perfect flight for me, but it was a start. It was getting on the plane was huge for me. And now I know I need to keep doing it, even if there's some triggers that still exist.
Yeah. Here, I want to say some of the things that I remember. One thing that comes up with a lot of people is they'll get really, really jazzed up to fly, but they'll have some conditions on that. That they're supported by turbulence.com, weather.com, making sure that there's nothing in the future of that. But it can be down to as much detail as what kind of airplane they're going to have and where they're going to sit. And if that doesn't work out, then they crash before they even get to the point of pushing back from the gate. And so one of the things that you shared with me was I'm just getting ready to get on the airplane early yesterday, or the day before, to go up there, and you said, hey Ron, there's a problem. They changed airplanes, and it was still a 787, but apparently United has 2 configurations, and they had, and Jim, I would have flown anyway, Jim, honestly, but when you enticed me with the lavish first class seats there, oh my God, I couldn't even tell we were in an airplane, to be honest with you. It was like your own little womb there, and pun intended. And when we got there, it was just amazing. But what happened was in the other configuration, there were seats across, and Jim had specifically picked 2 seats together, right? Makes sense. But when they came out they sent you a thing, said, oh, by the way, we've changed this, and your new seat is now, we were on the opposite sides of the cabin of 4 seats. And so you're not going to get help from the reservations people. That's not their job. The flight attendant, the agents don't want to deal with that. They're not going to try to gather 2 people and swap with them. And the flight attendants were nice and all that. And they said, hey, we'll support you, but you're kind of on your own. And so when we got down there, and that was the most nervous part for me was, we had 2 really nice people. They seemed like quiet, all that, sitting in the middle seats, and we had the outsides. And I just said, hey, we purchased this flight so we could sit one to each other. We're doing some business, and they were just really, really nice. I mean, I didn't even get to finish my sentence, and both of them said, yeah, sure, we'll move out there. So that was, it reinforced my faith in humanity. People really do care, and if you give them a chance and all that. But sitting there, I mean, I don't remember, we had, you know, we were talking about a lot of things besides the airplane, but the airplane, and is it fair to say that turbulence is the thing that really trips your trigger?
It is, because I realized after this flight, I actually really like flying.
Yeah.
I have zero problem with flying. I actually think it's really neat, but I hate turbulence.
Yeah.
That's really my trigger. If we flew on smooth flights, I'd fly every day.
Sure. Yeah.
And Ron, I want James to show the little plastic card that he got from the DOT, because that just impresses the crap out of me. And I don't know if he's the only one I'm aware of, and I don't know if you're aware of any others to the links people have gone. Jim, will you show us your little plastic card?
Yeah, I mean, it won't totally.
Yeah, that's good. At an angle, it's good.
Let's see. That's my.
Yeah, right there. A little more of an angle. Yeah, whatever.
Anyway,
it's a picture of Orville and Wilbur Wright.
That's on his student pilot certificate. He has taken the trouble to go get a student pilot license to work on this, which that just utterly blows me away. And how many flights in little planes have you taken, James?
I've taken. I took 6 Cessna flights now. Up to now, yeah.
How are those compared to this?
You know, I think flying's very cool. I get scared every time I go up. I do. I don't like heights, but you know what happened is I go up, and it's a couple things. My flight instructor is so positive, and when she talks to me, it's almost like, oh, I guess why am I scared? I don't know. This person is completely confident and happy and warm and open. Whereas if it was a Top Gun guy, he'd probably be like, what are you scared of? I'd be like, I don't know. You know, she's very warm.
God.
You know, it's like having I don't know. And then the second part is what's interesting about that experience, and this is what I think other fearful flyers should know, is yes, I am scared. And for about 15 minutes, I'm still a little scared. But the brain starts to calm down. Something in the brain starts to calm down. And after 15 minutes or 20 minutes, I enjoy it. I've seen some cool sunsets up there. I mean, and there really is a sense of freedom and even joy that happens. So but turbulence is still the trigger. You know, we don't go in the small plane. We haven't gone up when it's very turbulent, but we go. It's just to have my brain conceptualize. Yes, things fly, and you're not going to fall, and we're up here, and it's cool.
Yeah,
I still think that's incredible. But Ron, have you ever had anybody that has got?
Well, there's people that have done that before, but usually they'll ask me, you know, or they've asked others, you know, is it worth learning how to fly or taking a light airplane ride? And I'd say generally, you know, it depends on the person. And with Jim, it obviously made a difference. But with a lot of people, you know, when they get in a light airplane, especially if they got any claustrophobia or something, they can see much better in there, and they can see the person that's controlling the thing. So it may not have as much transference as it did for Jim. But I think Jim was just encouraged by the instructor that you picked and to keep going. And she sounds really, really supportive there. And and Jim put in a special request for a little bit of turbulence on the flight, so he could say that he hadn't wasted his time completely. And we got our wish, you know, in the pretty much a little bit over Denver, maybe, but more in the descent, right? Yesterday,
Denver, I was okay with, and this is what I thought was funny, to sit next to Ron, because then we hit, and it started getting uncomfortable for me. Ron's over there just eating some M&Ms, you know. You know,
what are you gonna do?
And That's when I kind of turned to him to kind of explain what's going on. And he's like, well, you got a high pressure system and a low pressure system. And, it's sort of, it's turning and it's uncomfortable.
And I made that up, by the way, that, none of that was true, Jim. That,
Okay. And then I was like, so what would Ron, what would you describe this as? Kind of moderate, right? He's like, no, I call this light chop.
And then we had a discussion because one of the things was the 787 it's like a baby big jet. It's not the biggest, but it's not all that small either. And so Newton's law says that the bigger the airplane is, the less influence it's going to be under by turbulence. And so Jim was putting a lot of eggs in that basket. And I said, he said, is this significantly better than a 737? And I said, probably not to the level that you need, because turbulence is turbulence. And I shared with them a flight just from Phoenix to Vegas in a 747, and we got the bejesus kicked out of us. It was bumpy. And so again, I try to emphasize to people, we're not trying to cherry pick our flights. We're trying to get to the point where we just change the way we think about what's going on around us. And I had a fella today in a 15-minute coaching call. And he flew like so many people. He flew without any incident. His mom and dad were divorced, and they shuffled him back and forth for years. And then all of a sudden, not so much. And he had kids, and now he's struggling with it again. And it's the story you tell yourself. But when you work as hard as Jim does, and you find other stories that you can explain to yourself. So, Dieter, that probably means that somebody's got a question.
Speaking of stories, Jim, first of all, congratulations. And like Eric and so many others, I'm totally inspired by your, I'm going to say tenacity, your ability to stay focused. And I just want to jump in because there's so many people that can really identify with your story and really identify with I guess also the vulnerability that you're displaying by coming on here and sharing with all of us, like really how that is on the inside, not just the triumph that comes after, but really what that journey is like. And there's just so many cool, like I realized that I had to fly when I drove from LA to Austin 2 days, or 4 hours on a plane, and there's lots of these comments that maybe train rides aren't as romantic as people, tell themselves, and maybe road trips aren't quite the thing as much as getting from A to B in like an hour, and it's just your story really captures so much of what people can relate to, and that's really you can be extremely bright and smart, and yet there's something in the wiring that just comes, and like you said that a couple times, and it's real. It's based on irrationality, but it's true for you, and that's what's so important, and that you're not alone. And all the comments, I mean, people, Jim, this is exactly what I'm going through. I'm not so sure that too many people would have gotten their student pilot.
That blows me away.
Why?
that is going the extra step. But like Ron said, it's just, that's what you needed to do, and you did it, and it's just something that you bring into your own unique experience of that. So
why? No, I do appreciate that. I do. I don't want to oversell it. It's the start of a process. My sister asked me the other day, "Are you cured?" I'm like, no. It's the start of a process. It's the start of a process, and to me, the first flight is the hardest because at least you break the seal, and then now you can get on other flights and work with your own discomfort. And as far as the student, I can't take all credit. My flight instructor suggested it because she's like, I think if you get this pilot license, it will change how you think about yourself, that you will be, there you go. Well, that's different. That's the certificate, but you'll think of yourself differently. You'll be somebody who legitimately is a student pilot, you know, and not a fearful flyer, but a student pilot who's learning more about, you know, aircraft and how things fly, and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't trust your sister, a sibling. She just wants to know if you've got any Valium or Percocet laying around the house for your last rough trip to the dentist that you might want to unload. That's all she cares about.
There's been plenty of Valium in the past, you know. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it was a joy to you know, I shared with you, Jim, that, you know, just you were so heartfelt in the classes and stuff and stood out, you know, amongst the other people that were in there. And so it was a no-brainer for me to you know, just to want to spend some extra time with you. And I just was touched to share the experience with you. And you tell the truth, man. It's a process, and, you know, it's not going to happen overnight. And you're going to make, you'll have, you know, a couple steps forward and maybe a step back now and then. And, but I'm looking forward. You're going to fly with us on the 19th over there. And I think you're going to fall more in the category of a mentor this time than one of the bona fide fearful flyers. So
I hope so. Until the turbs hit, and then I'll just be like, just give me some time. Just give me
exactly. Yeah. So anyway, that's you were the show tonight, and I'm really grateful that you had the courage to come on and totally enjoyed that, and can't wait to continue following you and see how it goes down the road.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on, and it was a special day for me to fly with you as well. It really was.
Well, Jim,
So-
you sold me. I'll see you in Burbank on the 19th. I'll get there the easy way or the hard way. Probably the hard way, but I'll see you there.
All right.
I'll try to
Right,
get
so
there. I think I may have that day off, so.
That'll be
All right.
cool.
So thanks, Dieter, for monitoring the comments are there. Thanks, Eric, and Diane. Stay warm up there, and we'll see you all next week at another edition of Fearless Flight Live. Thanks a lot, everybody.